Welcome to Inks for Starters with Alexa Von Tobel. I'm Alexa, a serial entrepreneur myself and founder and managing partner of Inspired Capital, a venture firm that backs fearless founders who are solving some of the biggest challenges facing humanity. Now in our 6th season, we sit down each week with one of the best founders on the planet to hear their story of guts, inspiration, and drive. Let's dive right in. This week, meet Chris Best, co-founder and CEO of Substack, a platform for independent writers and creators who own a direct connection with their audiences and make money from paid subscriptions. Chris started Substack in 2017 to build a new economic engine for culture by putting publishers in charge of enabling subscribers to support the work they deeply value. Today, the company has over 35 million active readers and over 3 million paid subscribers. Before Substack, Chris was a co-founder and CTO of the mobile messenger app Kick, where he helped build and scale a product used by over 300 million users. Chris graduated from the University of Waterloo and is based in San Francisco. And with that, I'm a huge fan of Substack. Let's welcome Chris. Chris, first of all, I'm so excited to have you on. I am just a massive consumer in Substack, so just thank you. Let's go back to those early days of 2017. Your initial vision for Substack was a bit of an anti-social media platform. And for many, Substack is synonymous with newsletters, but your platform is much more comprehensive than that. Can you walk us through the user experience of being a writer on the platform? And what are the parts of the product that may be surprising to the average user or subscriber?
For those who don't know, Substack is a platform for independent writers and creators to publish directly to their audience and make money from paid subscriptions. And even when we started Substack, the big version of this idea to us was making a new economic engine for culture. There's a new way that you can, as a creative person, can do the work that you believe in, have a direct connection with your audience that you own and control. You have creative freedom, and you can actually make money. People can subscribe directly to you. At the very start, we had this sort of grand vision for what this could become, and this very simple early core. And the early core is basically like a paid email newsletter, which is the complete sort of like instantiation of, I own my connection with my audience because I have their email address. I can send them an email anytime. I can bring that to a new service. And that version of Substack has been tremendously successful. Some of the best writers and thinkers in the world have sort of like sometimes quit in a blaze of glory their jobs in the mainstream media, sometimes been unceremoniously tossed out on their ear and then, go on to make millions of dollars and have a bigger audience than they ever had. And so in a lot of people's minds, I think they may have like imagined Substack as a platform that's only about sort of writing and emails, but Substack is a media platform. So you can publish text, you can publish a podcast, you could publish this on Substack if you wanted to, you can publish video, and we have a Substack app now where people can come and experience their subscriptions. You can join the comments section, join the community, and discover new great things on Substack.
You really are an incredible product mind. What do you think is the secret sauce of Substack?
I think the secret sauce is taking the power of technology and making it simple enough for normal people to use. And so if you're a writer, there's already a way that you could build a blog and charge subscriptions and start a forum and send emails. All those things existed, but there was a whole bunch of them. It was so fussy to figure it all out. And the promise of Substack is if you can make something truly great, that's hard enough. Come and type into this box. Come and talk into your phone. Come and make the thing that you're going to make. And if you can make something truly great there, that's all you should have to do. You shouldn't have to worry about anything else.
I want to talk about the business model a bit, because in so many ways, you are unending the traditional model of journalism. For those unfamiliar, can you talk a little bit about how did you come up with the business model? How did you think about aligning incentives between all the different parties? What does it look like today?
In some ways, the business model is actually the core of what Substack is. Because on Substack, you don't subscribe to Substack. You subscribe to a person or their individual publication that they're creating. And so the way the business model works is anybody can publish on Substack. You could go right now and start your Substack. Takes a minute. You could publish anything you want. You can publish text, audio, video to as large an audience as you want on email, the web, and the app. All that's totally free. Then you have the ability, you're not required to, but you have the ability to add paid subscriptions. And once you start charging, people can subscribe and they can pay you $5 a month or whatever price you set. And then we take a 10% fee of that subscription, which means that we literally only make money when you make money. And our incentive is to help you grow.
I love it. Speaking of growth, you have scaled Substack today to over 35 million active readers, over 3 million paid subscribers. And as you mentioned, there's sort of this interesting flywheel of readers coming in because of a specific writer. And you have huge names from Tina Brown, Nate Silver, et cetera, et cetera. Talk a little bit about how you thought about growing that audience. And when was your aha moment where you're like, now I really know how to make this grow and the flywheel is on?
Part of the magic of Substack is that, again, you're subscribing directly to somebody. I think as a reader, as an audience member, nobody wants Substack in the abstract. Nobody's like, I wish there was somewhere I could go and have more stuff to do and have to pay for it. It's like not a compelling value proposition. But somebody saying, I wish there was a place where I could go and subscribe to Alexa. That's compelling. And so people almost always discover Substack because they come for somebody. But part of the magic is that once people come to Substack, they can go on to discover other people, both through direct recommendations. So if you have a Substack, you can say, oh, by the way, one of the things that I will do for you as somebody who's come here for me and wants to get my perspective is I'll help put you onto things that are interesting. And you can discover other stuff. So I get the Substack app and I see other things that are great. And then as a publisher now, I get the benefit of bringing my audience to Substack, but then I also get the growth benefit of having other people in the Substack network discover me.
I love this quote of yours, and it makes me really happy that Substack is an index fund of culture, right? It's everybody writing about things that they find most interesting. Can you give us a sense of some of the variation or maybe some of the crazier, more out there Substacks that you're interested and fascinated by?
I often hear people will have a view of Substack as being only about whatever thing they know. And so they'll say, oh, Substack is only about these famous journalists who I saw that came, or Substack is only about these fashion influencers that I follow. It's like, I don't even know that there's other stuff on there. And the truth is that Substack is like an index fund of culture. There's a broad set of things that are possible. I'm constantly finding stuff that is like weird and surprising. But there's just a huge breadth, right? There's political Substack, there's sports Substack, there's fashion Substack. There's one Substack that's about a guy that is really into organic pools and has like a successful Substack about basically making a pond that you can swim in. I don't really understand it, but there's a whole subculture around this thing. And it's like, I could go on and list these examples, but the point is that there's that for everything. Like if there's a thing that people are into, chances are there's a Substack about it.
It really is incredible, the community that Substack builds in these really important ways. There's obviously been a lot of discourse around the role of AI in creating content. You have such a unique vantage point about what the next 5-10 years is going to look like around content creation by AI. What are your thoughts? What are your points of view there?
I wrote a piece about this on our company blog. I called it The Two Futures of Media. And I think when you talk about AI making media, you actually get into a sort of an interesting, almost philosophical question of like, what is the point of media? Like, what are we doing here? What is this? And I think there's kind of two ways you can look at it. One way is you can look at the point of media is purely for its effect on me in the moment. And in this vantage point, media is like a drug. Like I open my phone and I click on the thing and I feel a certain way and I'm kind of like, whatever, I disconnect, whatever it is, I'm kind of this passive thing and I'm using it, like I might smoke a cigarette or whatever. And it's just about its effect on me. And then the other view is that it's not just about getting what you want, but it's about, in some ways, learning what to want. It's about connecting to a broader culture. It's about getting some connection with real people out there in the world who are living their life and acting back upon them and being part of society. I basically think both of those futures are going to come to pass. I think you're going to have a world where AI drives the cost of quote unquote creating content down to zero. It's going to get easier and easier and easier and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to make any kind of thing. And actually, counterintuitively, that is going to dramatically raise the value of real human connection, raise the value of who are the people I trust, who are the people that I want to spend time with, what subscription relationships do I have? What human relationships do I have? Whose point of view is behind this thing? I think that the future for Substack for AI is in strengthening those human connections and in giving the people who are making stuff sort of creative leverage.
I agree with you completely. It will strengthen human connection. It will make you care more about the brands you like.
Yep.
In a sea of more noise and more content, actually, your commitment to the things that you care about will go up, and that authentic relationship will go up.
I'll just add one more thing about the sort of promise of you being able to do the human thing and make the human thing and everything else being taken care of. And Substack, historically, I think we were able to do that for writing. And it's the new AI technologies are making that easier and easier for other media types. The technology is getting to the point where I could call you up on Substack. I could have something that feels like a FaceTime call. And all of the parts of it that are about editing and clipping and translating and putting it together and making it sound good and making it look good, all of those things are getting massively more powerful with AI. And we're really excited about not just what that will do with the technology, but what bringing that technology to people will allow to happen.
I want to talk a little bit more about your predictions for the future. I mean, you sit at this incredible center point of content, how people consume content. We're in a really weird place in the world in terms of trusting content. Is what I'm seeing real? Is it bizarre warfare from other countries? What do you worry about over the next 5 to 10 years?
People worry about AI creating floods of slop and about bad information getting out there. And there's all of these things that people worry about. I think all of those things are real. I think they've already been real. Like the idea that the thing that's valuable on Substack is not that I get more content to spend my time on. Like I already didn't need more content. I even hate the word content. There's infinite things out there to read. There's infinite things out there to watch. There's infinite things that you could spend your time on. And the thing that's valuable is spending your time better. It's like having a relationship with somebody that you trust, somebody whose perspective that you care about, somebody that is the person standing behind the opinion or the fact or the piece of art. I think those things are already true. And the current state of technology is just accelerating something that was already the case, which is there's infinite content out there. Anybody can make it. And so what matters is who you're listening to, who you trust. I think, if I'm honest, the thing that I would worry about the most is people overreacting to those perceived problems and trying to shut down people's ability to publish. I think there's like a very understandable sense of, oh my goodness, there's so much stuff out there in the world. Oh my goodness, there's so much things that AI can do. We need to get ahead of this. We need to like tightly control what people can make. And I think that's like an understandable impulse, but I think it leads in the wrong direction.
I want to pivot a little bit. Last year, you did a community investment round that allowed writers to invest in Substack. Tell us about that. Again, obviously, Substack is a very, very successful business, global in its reach. What made you decide to kind of go to those first principles and open that up to the community?
It was something that writers have been asking for a while, and we had a sort of an opportunity through WeFunder that made it really easy to go and do it. We opened it up and it was sort of successful beyond our wildest expectations. Like we kind of hit the goal in the first few hours. It went really well, but really the point behind it was we just felt like it was good to be able to give the people who are participating in the success of the Substack ecosystem a chance to own a piece of it. It's sort of a sad fact about the state of the startup ecosystem in general is that usually you kind of have to be a VC or an insider to do that, to be able to own a piece of a company like Substack. And there was as I say, like a good, regulated, supported way to open it up. And we were thrilled to do that.
I mean, first of all, it's like a beautiful alignment, and to hit your goal in a few hours is pretty wild. So that's amazing. Everybody out there, maybe you should think about how you get your own community to invest in your business. And we'll be right back after a message from our sponsors. I want to transition a little bit to you, Chris. You're a repeat entrepreneur. Your last business Kick, hundreds of millions of users. Substack, 7 years in, close to 40 million users. I mean, really crazy usage. If you go back to your childhood and like fast forward to today, what's the moment in your childhood or the thing that happened that you think is like a straight line towards entrepreneurship or set you up to be the human that you are today?
I don't know if there's a specific moment. I always loved building things. I always loved figuring out how things worked. I was never very good at following direction. I think I maybe like I don't think it was a shock to people that knew me as a child that I'd end up doing something weird.
If you think about something that your parents did that you really attribute your success to, does anything come to mind?
My parents are great, very supportive. They're always like, you know, we had a strong default growing up of you can do anything you put your mind to, which is not literally true, but it's sort of like directionally and spiritually true in an important way. I'll do one thing that maybe went to Substack specifically is my parents are teachers. My dad's an English teacher. I grew up in a house full of books, and we always had like a strict bedtime as kids. But there was sort of a loophole where if you were in bed but you had the light on because you were reading a book, there was sort of like there was a blind eye in my house that was turned towards that. And so as a kid growing up, I could read basically as much as I wanted. And I think that helped.
I love that. And like immediately just implemented that in my own house. So thank you.
If it was like, you're encouraged to do this, by the way, it might not have worked, but it was just kind of like, the authorities have looked away from this.
If there's a book, mom's not shutting the lights off. I like this a lot. Again, you're a repeat entrepreneur and having built some businesses myself, it's hard. What was harder than you expected now that you've done it a few times?
The way I would describe it is the hardest thing is kind of like the moral weight of the thing. There's a lot of building a company that's hard. You're on the hook for all the things, in the early days, we handled all the customer support. We did everything that happens you have to do. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of sort of like schlep to it. But the part that I would say is the hardest is kind of like the existential hardness. The like, what are we doing? Is this even worth it? Should we keep going? Like, there's sort of like a human challenge of making something new that most people don't believe in yet, which is almost definitionally what you have to do when you make a new company. And this is, by the way, I think, one of the main reasons that having co-founders is really important, at least for me. I had a co-founder at Kick and I was not the CEO. I was the technical co-founder. I got to just like build the things and help them grow, but I wasn't sort of like carrying that burden. And starting a second company, I basically knew that maybe there are people out there that are up to carrying that burden alone, but I'm probably not one of them. And so having other people that are kind of like fully in it with you, I think really helps with that.
Yeah, I mean, you're not lonely in your problems, and having somebody that can care as much as you do, that isn't just like your pal, who your partner, your husband, wife, etc. Like at some point really is a co-founder, but they don't get to like actively help solve problems. So it is really nice to have people who can actively help solve problems. Chris, I want to talk a little bit about general creator economy. I feel like we've been through an explosion of the enthusiasm of the creator economy pulling back. I feel like there's another wave of enthusiasm. How do you think about the evolution of the creator economy?
If I'm honest, the two things that drive me crazy are content and content creators as the putting together of the two. I feel like that term has kind of like been through a hype cycle and been the subject of a lot of disparate things that get lumped in together. I do think there's a bunch of broad trends. The trend of technology democratizing access to creation,
Yep.
right? The idea that you don't have to go through a gatekeeper to publish something. You can go and publish it on the internet and you're going to be able to reach people if you make something that resonates. That is a big trend in the world that is not changing. The trend that as technology makes content creation cheap and infinite, the fact that trusted relationships are getting more and more valuable and that people have more and more agency of who to trust, that is a big trend that is not changing. And, I would add to this the idea that great writing, great culture, great podcasting, great movies, great everything you make, that stuff is really valuable. The fact that having an economic engine that supports creation of great stuff is like a more and more important piece of that puzzle. I'd argue that that trend is not going away. And so to the extent that the creator economy is the confluence of those things and building products that help people making stuff flourish in that new world, I think it's not going away.
I agree with you, powerfully agree with you on that. And I'm just giggling a little bit that you hate the word content and content creator. And I appreciate where that comes from.
I don't have a better alternative to suggest, by the way. So I'm not blaming anybody for saying it. It makes my skin crawl.
I'm happy I didn't write it. Last thing before we move to the quick fire round, I have a really good sense of kind of who you are, your sort of product foundation. As you think about building a business, how would you answer the question of, is there anything you hold as sacred?
There is one thing that I end up thinking about a lot, which is not a thing that we came up with or that is a special, unique insight, but it's the principle of starting with the people who use the product and working backward from them to everything else. And so the hard part about making something that grows is making something that people actually want and that actually works for them and that makes their life better. And I think the thing that's easy to like say intellectually and quite hard to live up to as you build a business is that doing that thing is so hard. Making something that's great for people is so hard that you really have to be willing to put it first and to work backwards from that to everything else you do. To what kind of product are we designing? What kind of technology are we using? What kind of company are we building? How do we organize ourselves? How does our business model work? You need to start with what are you trying to bring people in the world and work backwards to all of those other things that you're doing. How do you organize? How do you work? How do you make money? How do you all those things? And of course, it's one of these things that is true. Like you say that, and everybody will be like, of course, you need to work about the thing. But in reality, there's such a strong pull the other way. There's such a tendency to start with, we have this cool technology. What are we going to do with it? Or our company is set up in this way. Therefore, what are we going to work on?
Yep.
But unless you keep that thing front of mind, it's really easy to lose sight of it.
I think that's really well said. Chris, I want to move to a quick fire round. First thing that comes to your mind, tell us what you think. What is a book that has had a material impact on your life? Does not have to be a business book. And I love that you grew up in a family of teachers. What's a book that really left a dent?
Probably the most recent book I've read that rearranged my mental furniture is The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch. To me, it's like, I would call it the missing philosophy of science and technology. It's almost a philosophical point about what is the nature of knowledge? What is the nature of knowledge creation? What is science? What are we doing? And what is sort of like our place in the universe? And how should we think about technological and scientific progress?
I love it. I'm going to pick it up. Okay, when you're interviewing somebody, is there a question you like to ask that like you feel like kind of gets into something that you care about?
I do love to ask people what Substacks they subscribe to. It says a lot about a person.
In the last now, call it almost 8 years of Substack, tell me your biggest pinch me moment in the company's history where you kind of went home from work that day and were like, wow, I can't believe we achieved that. What happened?
I think the thing that always gets me is, and it's a thing that happens like somewhat frequently, where somebody who's made a Substack will say to us, Substack has changed my life. It's made me able to make the thing that I always believed that I could make that I just didn't see a way to do before. And there's times we've heard that from like really famous people that I'm like, I can't believe this person's ever here. And that sort of like pinch me in the way of, I can't believe that I'm getting to talk to this person who's a hero of mine. But it's almost more when it's just like, when it's not that, when it's somebody who's like, has maybe built this up from nothing or has like found success or found the ability to make something they care about because of the platform. That's the biggest one for me when people say that Substack's changed their life.
That's really cool, Chris. Like, I even have goosebumps thinking about that. You've empowered an entire generation of writers to get to write in their own way and in the way they want to, and without answering to anybody except their own value system. I mean, it's a pretty incredible thing. This may be a hard one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Can you give us an under the radar Substack, one or two, that we should all go subscribe to?
There's one I'll plug, which is one of my favorite products managers at Substack recently left Substack to start a Substack, which is one of the two acceptable reasons to leave Substack. It's if you're going to make your own company or you're going to start a Substack, which are kind of the same thing. Those are the two acceptable reasons. Her name is Jasmine Sun. It's jasmine.substack.com. I think she's just in the early phases of doing the thing, but she pitches it as Dwarkesh Patel meets Ezra Klein, but a girl.
I love that. What a good plug. Also, those are two really good reasons that you're allowed to quit Substack. I'm like, I see you and I agree. Last thing, if there's one thing that you're optimistic about in the world, what is it?
So the thing that people often associate Substack with is famous high profile people getting to make a lot of money and have creative freedom and lead their best life. That's wonderful. I love it when that happens. It's great. I think it's a good thing to do. If you have an audience, you can make a bunch of money on Substack and have creative freedom. But the thing that I get to see, I feel like an inside track on seeing, is once you wire up the technology and once you wire up the economic infrastructure in a way where there are people who have something to give the world, they know something that other people need to know, they have some creative spark in them, and there wasn't a way to do it before. They weren't going to get a job at a newspaper, or they weren't going to get put on TV, or they weren't going to have this thing. But because of this march of technology, they now have a path to bring that thing into the world. I think there is a renaissance that lives in the heads of those people that is going to get let out on Substack and lots of places on the internet that are driven by these same forces. I think the engine of creation that can get unlocked by freeing up people who can make great culture to go and make it without anybody's permission is truly thrilling.
That is such a great place to end. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody out there, if you want to check out more, if you're not already a big consumer and reader of Substack, head to substack.com, and you can join us next week for a new episode of For Starters with Alex Von Tobel. Chris, we're rooting for you. Thanks for what you're doing for the world. It's really powerful and incredibly inspiring. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.